Hey guys, come on downstairs. Welcome to part 2 of our Job 13 here on our Las Vegas career mode. It's Microsoft Flight Simulator. And when we left off in part number 1, we had run out of gas somewhere over the California desert and had to make an emergency dead stick landing out in the desert. And that's where we will pick up here in part 2. So we're on our way to Mexico from Las Vegas. And our job here is to take a lady down to have gastric bypass surgery. So we got the plane down, we got it stopped without running into anything that would cause crash type damage. So that's going to cost us half of what a crash would cost us as far as our penalties go for landing off the runway. And we're going to need a tow into the nearest airport, which is Needles, California. So we're going to pretend like we took the rest of December 26th to get our plane back to an airport. And now it's the next day, December 27th. And just before 7 a.m., we're going to put some gas get some gas in our plane, and we're going to continue on to Parker, Arizona, which was where we were headed when we ran out of gas. We had left Searchlight, Arizona. So our first leg was from Las Vegas to Searchlight. We made a landing at Searchlight, pretty rough landing as well. But we made that landing, took off from Searchlight. We were headed to Parker, Arizona, and we ran out of gas. Miscalculation by me. And so the lady that we're taking to Mexico weighs 330 pounds, all right? And I weigh 226 as the pilot, so in the cockpit we have over 500 pounds, probably too much, but we're desperate for money here in this series, right? So we're going to take off here on the 27th from Needles, California. It was an unexpected stop. And we were far enough away still from Parker, Arizona. I mean, it was a bad... The longest stretch was the leg from Searchlight to Parker, and I wasn't even close in my calculation of fuel. Not even close. Like, we probably... Like, we were about 53 miles away, and then we flew for another, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. So we're probably still a good 40 nautical miles away or more from Parker, Arizona. So we're still going to make that stop to gas up in Parker, Arizona, and then we'll have another stop at an airport called Desert Center. And then our next stop after that will be Mexicali in Mexico. All right, so we're going to take off here from Needles and head towards Parker. At Parker, so we're heading kind of south towards Parker. When we get to Parker, we'll turn and head west towards Central California. Needles, California here is right on the border of Arizona and California. I definitely could feel the extra weight in this plane as I was flying this job. Could absolutely feel the extra weight. So we're pretty heavy in this little Cessna. And like, I don't know how strict the weight limits are, the takeoff weight is. Like, I mean, how bad is it to be overweight a little bit? I don't know. We might have to push that line, because I don't want to fly, you know, and have to land and get gas like every 40 miles. I'd definitely like to make it further than that. I thought 4 legs or 4 legs was being pretty realistic, but apparently that middle leg between Searchlight and Parker was just too much. And very likely that we were probably flying into a pretty stiff headwind as well. Or at least it seems like we must have been to run out of gas like we did. Also, our fuel economy is probably not as good because of the weight we have in the plane, so that probably is also a factor. So just all around not good. All right, we're on our way. It's December 27th, and we will hopefully reach Mexico before the end of this day. Okay, we're going to move a little bit ahead in this flight. So we're getting further along towards our next stop. And the sun is fully up now. Should still get some nice soft morning light on the landscape, which should make it very pretty. But this is part 2 of a three-part series here in job number 13. It was easily our most ambitious job yet, to get ourselves across the border to Mexico. So in trying to decide if I wanted to take this flight to Mexicali or Tijuana, I did actually Google and make sure that they did do this surgery in Mexicali, which they do. They have a hospital there that specializes in this.
Papa 20 traffic, Cessna Bravo Golf Tree 5 miles northwest, 8,900 feet inbound to land runway 19er.
In this gastric bypass surgery. So we're still 35 miles from Parker and our next fuel up stop. So Mexicali is our destination. There is an international airport in Mexicali. We won't be landing at that, however. We will be landing on a little gravel airstrip, actually, where we've arranged transportation to get this lady to the hospital, I guess. But it's just a gravel runway. Hopefully we won't have any trouble finding it, because that last leg was pretty long as well. The last leg from Desert Center to Mexicali was a pretty good leg. So we might be pushing it on fuel there, and we might just I think we'll probably end up making that leg, maybe put a little extra fuel in and be a little bit overweight. So if you're new to this series, let me explain what we're doing here. Lately, obviously, I've been almost exclusively playing Flight Simulator. I find it super relaxing after a stressful day of taking care of a 4-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and trying to reason with them, which is impossible. So it's a nice wind down for me at the end of the day. I play it just about every night, do a flight from place to place. But I was getting to the point where I was having a hard time deciding where to fly, what to fly, and I got tired of just randomly picking places, just totally random, or trying to find like real world flights to do. That got kind of tedious, and I wanted a storyline. Like I'm used to playing sports games, right? So every game builds the story further. right? Every game, you know, the season is made up of game after game after game, and you're not just playing games and then calling it, you know, like you're building towards like the culmination of something, right? So you're playing all these individual games, but they're all creating a story of your team or a story of your season, or, you know, where's this journey gonna take us? And I just didn't have that with Flight Simulator. It was just like, Flight Simulator to me got to the point where it was just basically playing random games. It was like if I was playing Madden and I got in and I was just like, I'm gonna play a football game. Who am I gonna play today? I'll play the Raiders. Why not? Okay, great, big deal. So you won or you lose. What does it matter? You know? So I got in and I did a flight. Who cares? I did a flight from here to here. That's great. You know, what did you get out of it? What did you, like, there is nothing. There's no direction in this game. And so I just decided, I'm obviously on Xbox. I know there's some career modes that you can do on the PC that, you know, are integrated with websites and whatnot. And a lot of those are airline type ones, and I didn't really want to, I don't want to really get into a virtual airline. I don't want to do that because I don't want to get stuck just flying airliners. I like flying airliners, but I don't want to just exclusively fly airliners for an airline, or I don't know. I didn't want to get like, I wanted to keep it broad, keep my options open. So I just decided to make my own, right? Just make my own career mode. So I made up some rules that we have to go by, made up some penalties for bad performance. They're not super realistic, I understand that. If we crash this Cessna into the side of the mountain, you know, in real life, A, we're going to be dead. B, we're going to have to buy a completely new plane, right? So it's not realistic. We're just going to penalize ourselves $5,000 if we crash for a piston. And I've got it broken up for, you know, a small plane. If we crash a private jet, it's obviously going to be more of a penalty than if we crash this little Cessna. But I broke that all down in the rules. So our landing in part one of this job, our landing in the desert, that's going to cost us $2,500, half of the price of a crash. Had we crashed into a tree or something, that would have cost us $5,000. And so, yeah, that doesn't seem like a lot. But the other thing is, if we do crash, since we landed in the desert, we could tow our plane to the nearest airport and continue this job, right? Which is what we did. If we crashed, it's over. Like, we lose our fuel, we lose the $5,000, and we lose the opportunity cost. Like, this is a 300-something mile job, so it's going to be a pretty good payday if we make it there. If we crash, we don't get that payday. So it's more than just a $5,000 penalty that we're going to get. It's the time that we spent and the opportunity cost of getting there. So it is a pretty big penalty. It is, you know, if we crash, that landing was pretty stressful. That landing in the desert, because if I would have hit those trees, the simulator would have said that we ran into something and damaged our aircraft and crashed. So like that was pretty stressful to me. I was holding my breath for sure, because not only would it have cost me the $5,000, it would have cost me the entirety of this job, which I can't remember how much it is if we get there, but so there is some pressure to perform. Also, if we bounce a landing, that's going to cost us as well. I think it was like $1,000, like a fifth of the crash total if we bounce. And we have bounced once. We bounced in job number 3. We bounced at Lake Havasu, a pretty good little bounce. So that cost us. So the goal is to make money to buy new planes, right? And in the process, we're accomplishing a couple of things. We're learning how to fly the planes that we buy. We, instead of like bouncing around from plane to plane to plane, like this Cessna, I've got to really learn how to fly it. Like I'm going to have a lot of time in the Cessna, a lot of hours in the Cessna, should get very comfortable in the Cessna by the time we need to buy a new plane. And then when we get the next plane, I'll learn that one.
Papa
So it's gonna
traffic Cessna Bravo Golf Tree, 6 miles west, 4,100 feet inbound to land runway 19er.
Okay, so we're coming up on Parker, Arizona here. 6 miles down below us. So back to what I was saying. This whole exercise, this whole series, like this whole career mode thing, like the storylines that's great and all that, but we're accomplishing two things. Okay, we're learning how to fly all the planes, learning that like every plane has its own like little idiosyncrasies. All of the systems have little idiosyncrasies that you have to learn. That basically it just takes experience in the plane with situations, and once you've dealt with a situation a couple of times or dealt with the way the plane reacts to certain things, you start to learn it. And every time you fly it, things go smoother. Okay, like the first couple of jobs, they were especially that second one. It was it was a little bit difficult. But now, like we're getting into this Cessna, we're getting to know it pretty good. Jobs are getting a little bit more smooth outside of the fact that we just ran out of gas. But that wasn't really understanding how to fly the Cessna problem. That was just a bad calculation problem on my part. And then the other thing that this series is going to allow us to do is explore places, and do it in kind of a systematic, organized way, instead of like a flight in Brazil and then a flight in Scotland, just bouncing all over the world. Like we're gonna pick a little home airport, and especially now while we're flying these little general aviation planes, we're going to be doing little short regional trips, so we get to know the areas. Like this Las Vegas area has been nice. We've been to California, we've been to Arizona, we're going to be going to Utah, we've gone up to northern Nevada, we went to Death Valley, we went to the Sierra Nevada mountains, like lots of area just right around the general Las Vegas region that we can explore and kind of get to know. And then when we're done in this region, we'll go to another region of the world. So those are the two things that I want to accomplish with this series, right? Learn all the planes, learn the ins and outs, the idiosyncrasies, get comfortable in all of them. And also explore the world. And this is going to help us do it in an organized way with a little bit of direction and a little bit of a storyline. The storyline's not overly important, but at least it gives us a little bit of insight into the places that we're going, I guess. All right, so we've got the airport up ahead of us. This is Avi Sukia, I think. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but that is what this airport is called. It's just outside of Parker, Arizona. We're going to land here. We're going to fuel up. And then in this part 2 of this job, we're going to fly from here to Desert Center. And that's where we'll pick up in part 3. And in part 3, we'll go all the way from Desert Center to Mexicali. All right. We're going to come across the center of the runway here and enter the traffic pattern, if I remember correctly, on the downwind leg, I believe. So we're coming in at a 45-degree angle to the runway. We crossed over it, and now we're going to, so there you can see it back behind us on that 45-degree angle. And we're going to turn and do our downwind leg, and then to base, and then on to final, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think, if I remember right, that was the way we did it here. So this is job number 13 out of 17 that we did in the Las Vegas area. So we're starting to wind down our time in Las Vegas. And I know you guys are just dying to know where we go next. But after we post job 17, we'll have a video dedicated to our next spot. Our next home airport, or home city.
Papa 20 traffic Cessna Bravo Gulftree is on base runway 19er.
Okay, let's turn on to base here. So also I did just finally buy a subscription to Navigraph. So that will give me access to more charts and more information. I know a lot of the US stuff you can get free on SkyVector, which I've done. But Navigraph will just be better. And I'll also, at a certain point in the series, it's a little ways down the road, but at a certain point I will stop using the flight simulator map to flight plan.
Papa 20 traffic Cessna Bravo Gulftree is on final runway 19er to land.
All right, we're going to turn on to final, and I'll start using Navigraph to plan flights and manually enter them into our planes when we get a plane that has a GPS. This plane, no GPS, no autopilot, so we're hand flying the plane the entire time and following our navigational instruments to help get us from place to place. So we still need a flight plan, but there's nothing necessarily to enter into the plane. We just need, outside of the VOR frequencies and course and that kind of stuff. Okay, so we're coming in about 50 knots. I've learned that's kind of the sweet spot, landing at about 50 knots. I'm okay crossing the threshold around 55 or 60, and then slowing down to around 50 as we flare, or as we touch down. So that was a pretty nice landing. That one went pretty smooth, pretty soft, and we made it to Parker, Arizona. Let's go gas up. We're about halfway done with this particular episode, which is part 2 of our job 13. I don't think there will be many jobs that have 2 parts, let alone 3. Most jobs are going to be 1 video. This is going to be a very rare exception. In fact, I'm trying to think ahead. I can't think of any. I can't think of any jobs that I've done since I made this flight to Mexico that are going to require more than 1 part. I don't know. I don't think so. I guess the only one I can think of would be maybe the moving from place to place. But I'm going to keep those. I mean, I obviously I moved from Las Vegas almost 700 miles, so I obviously had to do that in legs. But I'm going to keep that video fairly brief, and we'll show the legs, like the airports that we stopped at, show the landings, and the takeoffs from there. But everything in between landings and takeoffs, it's probably just going to be like 2 or 3 cinematic cutscenes.
Papa 20 traffic Cessna Bravo Gulfstream is taxiing to runway 1.
Okay, we fueled up. We're going to taxi to runway 1 and take off. Head to our final spot. For this part, for this episode, will be the Desert Center Airport. So we've completed 2 out of our 4 legs of our trip to Mexico. So we're about halfway there, guys. Halfway to Mexico from Las Vegas. This was a long taxi, so we skipped ahead a little bit. Pretty long taxi out here in the desert, middle of nowhere. It's kind of a cool mountain out there. All right, we skip ahead again in this taxi. I think we're finally getting up to the runway. We've got our gas topped off. Well, not topped off. I shouldn't say topped off. We should have enough to get to Desert Center. Let's put it that way. It looks like we've got almost a half a tank, just a little bit under a half a tank of gas. So we shouldn't have any problems. We're probably a little bit overweight, but I don't think it was grossly overweight. So I think we should be all right. Okay, we're going to take off runway 1. Departure to the west, I believe, most likely. So runway number 1 is heading almost due north. That would be correlate to 10 degrees, which is almost due north. Okay, so we're definitely feeling the weight. Generally, we want to rotate in this plane at about 55 knots. I started trying to rotate at 55 knots. Our wheels did not leave the ground until we hit almost 70 knots. So we're definitely operating at a lot of weight here. I could really feel it when I was flying this, particularly on that passenger side over there with that lady. All right, I think this has got to be the Colorado River. And it looks like maybe a trailer park or something right there. Like an RV park, it looked like down below us there. I don't know if there's a little dam on the Colorado River around Parker. I think there might be. So we're going to circle out over the water. So we depart to the west here. And we're going to be heading a little bit southwest to our next VOR. It looks like the course we're going to want is around 250 degrees on that radial. Okay, there's definitely, well, maybe that's a bridge. It looks like a dam to me, though. Okay, we're going to head back over the city of Parker. We're almost up to 2,000 feet. Once we reach 3,000 feet, we'll start to worry about our mixture a little bit. Start to adjust our mixture as we gain altitude. As we gain altitude, we'll make our mixture less rich, so we're not feeding the engine as much fuel, because the engine is getting less oxygen to match that fuel because of the less oxygen at altitude. So we've moved ahead a little bit. Looks like we're kind of in the middle of the day, maybe actually getting into the afternoon. Man, that is pretty. Look at the colors. Look at the detail. I mean, the detail of this desert is just ridiculous. It's crazy. I love like all the little dry gullies and runoffs, and just the terrain's just really cool to look at. Really love the terrain of the American Southwest. It might be miserable and hot and dry and all of that from the ground, but from the air, the desert is awesome. All right, let's move ahead a little bit. We are at our heading of 250, and we are at 6,500 feet, so we're not super high. I want to say ground level has got to be pretty close to sea level here. Fairly close, I would think. So there's Desert Center CN64, and it doesn't have an ATIS, so we're just going to go ahead and announce.
Charlie November 6-4 traffic Cessna Bravo Golf Tree for 1 miles northeast 6,600 feet inbound to land runway 23.
So we're 41 miles northeast. We're going to land on runway 23, which is a heading of somewhere around 230 degrees, and we are heading 250 degrees, so we should be able to fly straight in to our Desert Center Airport. So this airport didn't have an ATIS, so I didn't get the weather. But if I remember right, what I would normally do is go into the VFR map and find an airport in the vicinity that does have an ATIS and just check the weather that way. Now that I have Navigraph, I can go into Navigraph and check the weather, which is a plus, but I did not have that on this flight, and I will not have it up until we're in area number 4, actually, because that's where I'm currently doing flights in real time right now, is in area number 4, even though I'm only still in area number 1 as far as posting videos go. So by area number 4, a couple of things. I'll have Navigraph, so I'll be able to create the flight plans that way and enter them manually into the computer like you would in a real plane. And I won't use the flight simulator interface to flight plan anymore, which will be nice. It just adds another element of realism to it. In area number 3 is when we have enough funds to buy our next plane. So we'll be flying the Cessna 152 throughout the remainder of area number 1, Las Vegas, and area number 2, yet to be announced. But we're getting close to area number 2. This is job number 13. We get this lady to Mexico. Then in job number 14, we're going to be heading up into south central Utah. Job number 15, we're heading up into Utah again. Job number 16, we head down to Kingman, Arizona. And then job number 17, our final job in Las Vegas, we will head into Los Angeles. And then after that, we will fly this Cessna from Las Vegas to our new home airport. And we'll make a video out of that. So we're getting further into California here. The closer we get towards the coast, start to encounter some mountain ranges. But we will not get all the way to the coast. Mexicali is south of the California border, and it is in central California. So there's still the coastal range between Mexicali and Tijuana and San Diego. Man, look at the detail on the shadows. Even for Xbox. Man, even for Xbox, and this isn't even an HDR or in 4K. Like, I don't have that capability with the capture card that I have. I don't have that capability yet. My capture card is a cheapie. But you can still tell the amount of detail on those mountains out in the distance. And look at the shadows and the soft light. That's just awesome. The type of light, man, is just like a outdoor photographer's dream. It's just not super harsh. Brings out a lot of colors, doesn't wash out a lot of the color. And just creates awesome shadows and depth, contrast. Okay, so we're around 6,600 feet. We've been staying at that altitude pretty good. Not bad for hand flying. Definitely getting better at it. Better at maintaining our heading. So the VOR, wow, that came out really wrong. The VOR that we were tracking to get to Desert Center, we have reached it, and now we are tracking that radio away from it. As you look at our NAV1 instrument, the little arrow is pointing down, meaning that we are no longer flying to that waypoint. We're flying away from it. But we can still navigate with it because we can stay on that line away from it, which is how we're going to try to find this airport. Makes it a little bit harder when there's not a VOR right at the airport, because you can't find a new radial to get to the airport. If you get off track, you have to get back to that radial, or to the original radial, and stay on it, because there's only one radial between the VOR and an airport that's out in the distance. If the VOR is at the airport, there's 360 different radials that you can take to get to it. I tried to explain that in one video. I don't know how well I did it, but if you fly Flight Simulator, then you know what I'm talking about. If you understand VOR navigation, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, I might have lost you, and I'm sorry. I tried to explain it. I didn't, without being able to like draw on a piece of paper for y'all to see. It's kind of hard to explain with just using words. Okay, we're coming into the valley where Desert Center Airport is located. And this is going to be our final stop for this video. And then in part 3, we'll make it the rest of the way to Mexicali. Okay, so we are heading at
Charlie November 6-4 traffic Cessna Bravo Golf Tree is on final runway 23 to land.
So we're heading at about 230 degrees, so like I said, we're going to be able to fly straight into this runway. The runway direction, the runway heading is almost straight west, a little bit southwest. Due west would be 270, but we are at, what does it look like? We're at 229 maybe, something like that. 229 might be our heading. So we're not gonna enter the traffic pattern or anything on this one. We're just gonna fly straight in runway 23, put it down. We're gonna move ahead a little bit here. The wind has kind of pushed us off course to the left a little bit, so we've got to fight it to get back in line with the runway. And we're facing a little bit of a headwind, I believe. But I don't think there was much wind down at ground level. This is just an altitude wind. I think the wind was pretty calm as we actually landed this plane. So we're going to fly straight in runway 23. There's a little building at the back end of the runway that we're going to park at. It's not a huge airport. There is like a racetrack or something at the front of the airport. I don't know if it's like a go-kart track. I should look it up on Google Maps and see exactly what it is. Some type of racetrack, it looks like. So I don't know, like, it's really hard. It's kind of hard on Flight Simulator to tell the scale of the racetrack. So I don't know if it's like a go-kart track or if it's actually a big enough track that you could actually race, you know, cars on. I don't know. I'd have to look on Google Maps and see. It looks like you got some farmland out in that valley. So must be some water somewhere to get some irrigation out there. It looks like there might be a little stream bed that was dry just off to the right. But outside of that, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere here. Desert Center. We'll stop here, get some gas, and then our next leg will be all the way across the border into Mexico. Man, we were a lot further away from that runway than it looked. I announced when we were on final, when we were like 20 miles away, even though we could just see it. I guess we're only going 50 knots. We're definitely flying into a headwind because we're just hanging up here at 50 knots. I maybe should have waited on flaps till I was a little bit closer to final. We're eventually going to get there. The Cessna's so slow, you guys. Cannot wait. Like, I've loved flying it. It's been fun, but I am actually very glad to be in a little bit faster plane. I will be. A bit more powerful plane. Although it has been fun to feel the wind kind of toss us around in this one. In fact, there's a traffic pattern that we fly in area number 3 in one of the jobs where the wind just throws us all over the place. It's a brutal, I mean, it's a rough traffic pattern that we have to fly. Like nothing we've seen yet in Vegas. Like super bouncy, super windy. Okay, so you can see the racetrack. Looks like it might be big enough for cars. Maybe this is a airport slash racing club. So like a, I don't know, air park slash racing club, something like that. Here on Desert Center. All right, we're about to be wheels down in Desert Center. Just try to make sure we don't bounce it. And we do pretty good. Put it down softly and let's get ourselves to the end of this runway here where the ramp is that we'll be able to park at. Hey, sorry to make you dizzy there. So it looks like the wind might be blowing a little bit from our right, because it's looking like it's trying to push the nose over that way. Pretty long runway for being out in the middle of nowhere too. We'll eventually get to the end of it, get this thing parked, fueled up, and then we'll take a break until our next episode will be part 3. All right, building in sight. So next episode, we will finish off job number 13. We'll get this lady to Mexico, try to get her down safely, and then we'll square things up, see where our account's at. This should be a pretty profitable job. It was a lot of miles. So, I'm going to go knock on the door of this building, see if anybody's here, or if we just landed in a ghost town. All right, leg 3 of 4 is complete. All we have left is the final leg. And there's our fuel. I'm not going to worry about going over how much we used right here. I'll just, at the end of the third part of our next video, I'll just square everything up and we'll see how much we used. So that's it for now. Join us for part 3 as we get ourselves to Mexicali, Baja California, Mexico. It's Mama's Basement, Las Vegas career mode.